I hope you guys are learning a lot about the topic. Yes, a lot about theory. Yes, so far at camp. All right, that's what we're not talking about right now, okay? We're going to talk about right now everything else that can help you win close debate rounds, okay? So everything like being memorable, making your speech and your position stand out in the judge's mind, and we'll cover that first, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll talk about how to utilize verbal and nonverbal skills to make yourself more persuasive in the judge's mind. So first we're going to start off and talk about being memorable. But you might say, what? You know, so many speeches at a tournament. Sometimes you just want to get through the round, get to dinner, or whatever. But the point is that if you're not paying attention and making each speech memorable, the judge is less likely to vote for you. So here we have a scientific diagram of your typical judge at an NCFCA tournament or STOA tournament. Here she is. She's after the round. She's just still thinking about it. You can click. She says, oh, they urged an aft ballot and the other team urged a neg ballot. But what's she really thinking about? She's really thinking, what time is dinner? What did I write on my flow? Did I leave the stove on? Her little brain is working overtime, okay? So, how many of you have thought or heard someone say this? Yes, but how come that didn't communicate across to that poor little mommy judge on there? Because the debaters likely were paying too much attention to their arguments and their points on the flow and not enough attention into making their speech a real speech, making it memorable and stand out in the judge's mind. Some people would say that pure logic and pure just like, you have the best argument, you had it, that DA was structured just exactly right, and they dropped 3 out of your 7 DAs. How come that's not persuasive? Well, the point is, pure logos or pure logic cannot persuade. A real speech needs to have the other elements of ethos and pathos in order to be persuasive. So now we're going to watch a little video of an example of what happens in debate when people throw pathos and ethos out the window and focus only on the logos, only on the logic. And this is what you end up with.
High school debate is not what it used to be. There is the traditional debate still, but now there's a hybrid.
That's right, policy debate. It's about detailed research and the physical ability to argue your side in just a few short minutes. WD and Sean Lewis introduces you to the fast minds and some fast talking he found at Whitney Young High School.
Overall, merchants not
It's debate so fast, so few of us can actually understand. But here at Whitney Young High School, some of the country's best are honing their craft. Kevin Hurd and Miss A.L. Gonzalez are ranked among the top high school policy debaters in the country. And the way they speak
It's a combination of speed and reading.
actually serves a purpose.
You just made that faster.
There is indeed a jargon to debate language. And it's like learning a different language.
Where you and I talk about 60
All right, that's
words
good.
a minute, high school policy debaters get upwards of 350.
So these guys have completely thrown out the window anything about, honing persuasion and persuasiveness for the real world. It's like its own language. Only people who are trained in debate can understand that. Yeah, what were you guys going to say?
I was just going to say I compete in the NFL and in the TFA specifically in Texas. You have to deal with people that fast and faster regularly.
Okay, he says he competes in Texas, and there are people that fast and faster regularly. So yeah, it's a great brain exercise, all right? And it's a great, it's fun in its own way, but does it prepare you for the real world? Not so much. We have one more comment back here, yeah.
I think it does prepare you for the real world. I just think it's really just a cultural difference between public school and homeschool.
It could be. It could be. It prepares you in a way. It helps your mind to think faster. It helps you learn to think on your feet. And it allows you to delve deep into a topic. But when you look at applying communication to a real-world audience, the skills that you learn in that type of debate are really not going to follow through for you in the real world. So let's go ahead and talk about these close rounds. When you get in a round that you say, we won on the flow. We had the right arguments were all there on my side. But somehow I lost. Well, I'm going to give you 3 things to work on, and these things we'll cover in these lectures of how can you tip a close round in your favor. You can, first of all, be memorable, and that's what we're going to talk about first. Being memorable. So here are some easy ways to be memorable, because you want to go beyond logic, beyond just the logos of it. So what's your judge going to remember? They're going to remember, are they going to remember that you had 5 responses to that one argument? No, they're not going to remember that. They're going to remember, first of all, your introduction and your conclusion. So the first tip on being memorable is to make sure you don't overlook your introductions and your conclusions, because studies have proven that these are the first impressions and last impressions that really stick in your audience's mind. So here's some examples of how can you make an intro really memorable. Well, perhaps many of you have given an intro like this, and if you have, I'm among you, but this is not the ideal. This intro starts out, okay, is the timer ready? Is the other team ready? Okay, I have a lot to cover, so let me just jump in right here. I want to start on this argument. And when you do this, you really waste that first 45 seconds. You waste your opportunity to make a strong first impression as a knowledgeable person on your judge. And so an alternative, if you're really going for persuasion here, would be to go ahead and start out. Start out with a story, something that's going to really connect with your audience, and something that relates to your main argument. So in this case, the argument is about gun control. It's saying that people need guns in order to defend themselves. So you could start out with a story. Susie was home alone when she heard someone break into her house. She ran to the bathroom. She called 911. But when the police got there, it was too late. If only Susie had the right to bear arms, she could have protected herself. Unfortunately, it's just another life lost to gun control. Something like that. You can tie your argument in with a story that your judge is going to remember, hopefully, for the rest of the day, if not for longer than that. Endings are the same. They're equally important. You create a mood in the room when you're talking, and if you just kind of give an ending that drags on and you just let your voice trail off at the end, your judge is going to assume that you're not excited about what you're talking about, and they're not going to really think, oh, this person is really passionate about their side. So a good way to end would be to drive home that main point. Go back, yeah. That's right. So for a case about Russia, let's say there was a foreign policy case, and this argument, your main argument, was a disadvantage, saying that Russia was going to be angered by the plan. You would say, if we upset Russia by passing this plan, we risk undoing all of the positive interactions that the Obama administration has done, and we risk turning an ally into an enemy, right? That could be an example of a good ending. Someone else might give an ending like this, and we've probably evolved on this. This is a type of ending which I kind of just call the kitchen sink. You take all your arguments and you're like, oh yeah, and this, oh yeah, and this. So because of our topicality point, our inherency point, and because of our 3 disadvantages that are really important, and because their sources aren't important anyway, and their sources are questionable, that's why you need to vote negative. We've all done it, but that doesn't stick in your judge's mind, and it doesn't let the judge, it doesn't push the judge onto your side on that table. So what you need to do is make sure that last line of your speech is planned ahead of time. You want to write out on your flow pad the last sentence that you're going to say, so that you can let that last line hang in the air after your speech. And then don't worry about saying, I'm not ready for cross-examination, or thank you, or something like that after your speech. Just let that line hang in the air and create that atmosphere in the room where you're owning your platform, you're owning your stage, and you are confident. So again, science has shown that first impressions are very important as far as persuasion and creating confidence. And Austin J. Freely, author of a debate textbook that's used by many schools, says that good debaters are going to end on a high note, leaving a lasting impression. You're not just going to end by trailing off and throwing all your arguments into the bucket. All right, this is my favorite part of being memorable, and it is figures of speech. Now, you guys already heard Isaiah talk about a few of these, right? Yeah, so we're just going to go over my favorite 3. I think there's 3. These are the easiest ones, in my opinion. If you're new to trying to take your debate and make it really more a speech and less a list of arguments, these are going to be the tools that you need to use. So the easiest one is repetition. All you have to do is just take your main point and repeat it. That's pretty simple. Obviously, Martin Luther King Jr. is very famous for doing this. Here's his quote. Look at how many times he says, I have a dream, right? We've all seen this. This is a great use of the figure of speech repetition. So in a debate round, you don't have to be quite this cheesy about it, but if your main point is Sanctions routinely fail. You know, you might throw that in at the beginning, you might throw that in when you're fleshing out that argument, and then in your conclusion you would say, because sanctions routinely fall flat of their expectations, a negative ballot is warranted, or something like that. So you want to throw that same phrasing in there. All right? The second one that's really, really easy to do is called anti-metaboly. And this is the one you've probably heard JFK, he's really famous for this one, when he says, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And this is real easy to implement in debate. You just take a phrase, and the structure is you use two words and then you flip them around. All right, so here's a bunch more examples here. The meaning of life is to give life a meaning. If guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Can you tell what my case was in high school? All right, here we go. Next one. And this one may be hard to read. It says, I have a great need for Christ. I have a great Christ for my need. So you can start to see how if you're sitting there and you have an extra 10 seconds of prep time, take that prep time and come up with one of these. They're really easy to do. So if you have that in your mind, you can always fall back on that. Another really easy one to do is metaphors. And this doesn't have to be something like, the affirmative case is like a chair with 4 legs, and if you knock out one leg, the chair will collapse. You know, because we win topicality, the whole case falls. You know, no, don't do that.